Good evening. Welcome to the Westborough Finance Committee meeting of August 15th, 2024, here in Memorial Hall and Town Hall. This is our second meeting of fiscal 2025. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the location here as stated in the agenda. And it's possible that all members of the public may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed remotely via the link in the agenda. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely, as we noted. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 28, Charter Channel 192, or via Westborough TV's online platforms at westboroughTV.org and youtube.com/Westborough TV. This meeting is being recorded as well as live streamed by Westborough TV, and we thank them for their help. First announcement was asked by that same group, Westborough TV, that all of us talk within 6 inches of a microphone. When you're sitting back here, apparently it's when things fall apart. So they ask when you're going to say something close to the mic, and then your wisdom will be shared amongst the masses. But apparently a lot of people end up, kind of sitting back in the chair, and that's when things go foul. Okay, so that's it. Next up, is there public comment? You're our public today, so.
All right.
Come on up.
Testing, I guess. Wilfred Savoy, 41 Chestnut Street. I'd like to encourage the Finance Committee to advocate for 3 items. One, you're going to have some discussion a little later about the American Rescue Plan Act, and my understanding is that some of that money can be used to reduce the local tax rate. So I would encourage you to consider that in your discussions. The second point would be the alternative budget process. You're coming up to the budget summit soon, and I think it was at your May meeting I presented an alternative budget process where you would start from establishing the tax rate, the percentage increase in the tax rate, add the anticipated non-taxable revenues. That's what you have to spend. So it's a reverse of what you're doing now. I did share with you that handout back then. And then the third item is the format of the school department budget. It's been a highly narrative budget over the years and not data. And we're seeing, I think, more scrutiny of school budgets lately. And in the interests of transparency, we do need additional data, similar to all the other town budgets, all the other departments in the town, particularly when it comes to salary. So I did share that information with the new superintendent. Ironically, the sample that I gave her, that I used for a good budget format, is Westwood, which is where she's from. So I did share that with her. So those are the 3 items. I would encourage the Finance Committee to advocate for those 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Fred, for your input. Okay, no one else here for public comment. So next up is ARPA update and recommendations, if any, and there are none at this time. We last visited this about, a month or so ago. I put it on the agenda just in case there were. But when we last did it. Everything was sort of moving forward well. There were two items that were sort of in finalization, which was the EDC grant and the recreation dog park, which was in design, and I think those have moved slightly forward. We have Christy Williams joining with us tonight remotely, so Christy, maybe you could just comment on those two if it's
Sure.
something you happen to top of your head.
Sure. So I actually just want to
Can't
go
hear
back
you
to what
yet.
Ms. Oh, You
maybe
can't hear
we have
me?
to turn up the sound or something.
can you hear me?
Oh, I think David's doing something. Oh, not yet. I think he's trying to get it to work.
Christy, can you say something?
Don't hear anything yet.
Is Elon Musk running this? Is Elon Musk running this?
Yeah, I don't want to turn up my volume because it'll start echoing again.
Can you hear me?
I hear you on my laptop.
Oh, it's your laptop.
And there's a huge echo, but not in the room yet. You can hear us, though?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can hear me on your laptop.
Just when you speak.
Oh, so I guess I could turn
You
this
could,
on.
yeah, and just mute your speaker when she's done,
Can try that.
worst case.
Does the speaker go on this mic? All right, we're gonna try that.
Can you hear me?
Let's see if this works. Oh, I
Hello?
can mute again. Oh, that's on my computer. Here.
Hello?
It does echo.
That was wrong.
It's not gonna work, because that method isn't gonna work. All right. See if David has any other tricks. So obviously her audio is working because we can hear it that way, and somehow our audio in the room is not working. All right.
Is Westborough TV logged in to the Zoom?
I don't know.
That's a good, that would do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not in her office, is she? This could be very easily solved.
I was gonna say, cross one of you off the list.
Maybe she can try logging out and logging back in? I mean, no?
It's not on her end.
No, I mean, her sound's working fine, it's just somehow
Yeah.
not getting the sound in here. Because when I turn off my unmuted mic,
Yeah.
it just can't hear. Uh-oh.
I was gonna say, it's
That's
just,
her now.
yeah.
Hello. Oh, I could try that. Does that work?
Can you hear me now?
We can, yeah. Right?
Will that work?
You try again?
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you guys hear? So.
Sure, give it a shot.
Okay, I'll try. Okay. So related to ARPA, just to go back to Mr. Savoy's proposal, there's only currently about $10,000, $10,000 to $20,000 left in ARPA funds. So I just want to be clear about that. You might be seeing other communities in the newspaper talking about how to spend their ARPA funds. Those are communities that have not otherwise awarded them, and they need to be awarded and under contract by the end of the calendar year. So I think Westborough should be really proud of the work that we did, because we really were able to strategically and over time knock off some high cost capital items. So the dog park is out to bid. I believe this week we received bids, so I haven't seen those yet. But that would really be the last piece that we're waiting for before we ask for additional ideas, or if there's any additional funds needed to sort of clear up the rest of those funds by the end of the calendar year.
Like, I think I would say that using ARPA funds for projects that we would have done otherwise does reduce the citizens' tax bills effectively.
Yeah,
Not
and I think
directly
it's
to the
important.
tax, but-
Yeah, it's important to note that ARPA funds, like free cash, are one-time revenue sources, and same as ESSER funds, which you hear about through the schools. And so using that to reduce the tax rate creates a structural deficit that then requires you in the future years to significantly increase your taxes. So, but that being said, there's probably $10,000 to $20,000 currently available, and we'll certainly be back to you in the next couple of months to allocate those funds.
Great. And is the EDC grants going forward?
I believe so, the working capital grants.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll give an update on all of those once we know how much is left. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So next up, we wanted to get a discussion and update on the budget summit. The date has been picked. It's first.
September 26th.
Yes. So it'll be on a Thursday night. It'll be a tri-board meeting here. It'll replace one of our Thursday night meetings. Well, it won't be here. It'll be across the street.
Yep. Can you see my screen if I share it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's just the audio not working.
Okay. Yeah, so I came to you, I think in May, we talked about better ways that we could approach the budget summit, really using it, I think, as a better tool to sort of kick off the budget season and start to come together around anticipated increases. And in the past, I think it's been a lot more narrative about, we sort of highlight budget pressures without putting numbers against them. So I think hearing from all of you and the public and the select board, we're looking at sort of refining this approach. And so we talked about this with finance team earlier this week, but essentially what I do have in front of you is really just what you might see on the agenda. So we always start the budget summit with introductions, the purpose of the summit, and then we talk about the closeout of the previous fiscal year and give an update on the current fiscal year. And those are pretty short presentations. And then I think this is the next agenda item, and this is really the bulk of the presentation. So the bullets that you see here are new. They're not completely different, but they are new. So the idea here is that we would start with a preliminary revenue report. We gave a bit of this last year, but we would really give some more robust information. I think one of the things that Walter heard us say many times at the finance team is this is incredibly early to be looking at fiscal 26. But that doesn't mean we can't provide numbers, just as long as everyone understands that we're barely into fiscal 25. And then I'll just run through these and then we'll take questions, or I don't know, Walter, if you want to have some further discussion. But for the second bullet, we have budget assumptions. So I heard from the finance committee last time I was here, or before you, that there's an interest in understanding what the impact would be if you just took the current budget and you increased it by 2% to maybe 2.5%, understanding sort of how that Prop 2.5 might play against the budget. And then one of the things we talked about at finance team is the need for folks to really understand excess levy capacity. We have not used excess levy capacity in several years. That means that we're not, even though we're not at our levy limit, we're not going above what we could have taxed under Prop 2.5. In current fiscal 25, we do expect to use excess levy capacity, and I think having some discussion about what that means is important. The third bullet is identified staffing and contract impacts. So we have talked before, we've identified a few staffing changes. I don't think we've put numbers against them. We would look to do that. The superintendent has talked about, potentially providing information around like class size reporting and things like that at the budget summit. And then contract impacts, meaning which contracts are outstanding, what's the impact of the contracts that have been negotiated, things like that. And then identifying other budget pressures and priorities that we may or may not be able to put numbers to. An example of this a few years ago was the transportation budget in the school department. We might identify at some point this is an example, but as a budget pressure, but maybe providing additional information about what we're seeing out there in terms of increases. And then giving sort of a broader overview of capital planning. Not necessarily going through all the capital items, but just a broader overview of capital planning. Understanding that with all the transition in the finance department, we didn't complete that long-term capital plan, but we are looking to do that as we round out the finance folks. So I don't know, before I go to the next slide, this is a lot. I'd love to get feedback if that's appropriate.
Okay, anybody from committee comment?
I'm really happy to see this. This looks really detailed. I think there's a good positive step.
I agree. I like the approach and really looking at sort of that fundamental and making sure that everybody's on the same page and understanding. Especially looking at the excess levy capacity and the budget, right? What are those levers that we have to pull and really understanding that process?
So I just had one point. Christy, would we be also covering something about the grants? What grants have we got this year so far, or what are budgeted for? I don't know if she was able
Sorry,
to.
I'm managing to
Yep, I can imagine that. I can understand.
Yes, I think you can definitely give some information about grants. I think that makes sense.
Perfect.
That is something too, I think, from the school perspective, right? So the schools have a lot of different funding sources, and so not just from a town perspective, if we could pass along sort of that request to this superintendent also, I think that's something that I really want to see more.
I couldn't hear that, so I don't know if someone can repeat it.
Close.
I thought I was really close.
No.
So the schools have a lot of grant funding, right? And so that was sort of a question I really want to look a little bit more like the all funds sort of budget for the schools, and if we can convey sort of that request to the superintendent also, I would love to see more of that information from schools in particular, because that's where a bulk of the grants, I think, live.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't hear anything, so I don't know if it's the mic's not picking up, or if Walter, if you can just repeat the question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. She's asking about that the schools have a lot of the grants, so if we could have that also passed on to the superintendent.
Sure, definitely.
There's a lot of their programs are grant-based, I guess, is what you're saying.
Yep.
Yes, so can you hear me now?
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Christy, I was wondering, under the conversation about budget assumptions, one of the things that we may be able to consider, since you're talking about the 2% limits, is, scenario building in terms of what does a 2% raise look like versus a 4% versus a 5%. I don't know what the right numbers to anchor on, but just understanding the different scenarios and what the downstream impacts might be more important or more, certainly they add more to the conversation than just saying, in this scenario, this is how we would be going forward. So just a suggestion. Thank you.
I guess I think we might be able to do that very generally, just given the sort of the time frame and the point at which we would be at. But I think we can do some very general, because we can show you, say, I'm just sort of spitballing. So like a 3% reduction in, I'm making it up, the finance department budget would have to impact personnel at this, something very general. But I don't know how specific, but it's a good sort of jumping off point for discussion as we move forward through the budget process. So.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, I guess.
Oh, okay. So the next thing that we wanted to put on the agenda is just really an update on building projects. So this is sort of the building projects that you're probably hearing about. So really actively working on the Regional Emergency Communication Center, obviously the community center, the library, and the golf club building. The fire substation is on here. It was actually brought up at the finance team meeting. I didn't previously have it on here. But as some of you may know, we did send a letter to the state requesting use of some of their property for a future substation. So giving an update on that, wherever that's at that point. And then just some school building projects. We all know that there's been a few that have been ongoing, and so asking for that update as well.
Andrew?
The senior center isn't on here, and by that I mean the existing building. Does that fall under one of these buckets?
I would say that would fall under community center.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Good point. Any others? Okay, we're set here.
Okay, great. The last one is a pretty easy one. So this would be, we did this last year. I think this might be the last year. This is our last opportunity, I guess, to award any of this money. So we would want to walk through these projects and their status briefly. I think this also really requires some separate meetings with you and with the select board. So this would just be more of a general update that we would want to have. So on previous agendas, we've also sometimes, if we feel like we have time, we've had some discussion about October town meeting warrant articles. You all just got to see the warrant. I think given the first slide I showed, I'm not sure that we would have time for that discussion, but we can see.
Okay. Any questions on that?
Walter, I just have one more comment. Christy, would it make sense to include expectations for water, sewer, and stormwater rates going forward for the next year at that meeting as well, or is that something separate?
Do you mean what the budget would be, or what the impact would be for the fiscal 26 budget?
Well, I was just thinking in terms of expectations on how much we think those rates might be going up.
Well, I'll write that down, and we'll have to figure out how that would work. I mean, I guess ultimately, when we're providing you this information, it's sort of based on current numbers. So I don't see. I would think that we could provide something. I just think there's, as you all know, there's a lot of moving pieces. But I'll add that to what we consider as we develop it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I think I just had one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Walter. So I just had, Christy, one point about the debt as well. Like, I know this may be covered somewhere, but talking about the debt, like where we are in terms of the debt scenario, and especially because I remember in the last summit, we did talk about the fact that, we are enjoying a good rating at the moment. So our debt interest rate is pretty low, but how much we have and where exactly we stand, I think that would be good to know as well.
So you would want an update on where we are at with our debt. I think in relation to our comprehensive fiscal management policies,
Right.
probably an update on our debt strategy, and just understanding where we're at related to debt.
That's
Yep.
right.
Yes.
Thank you. Yep. Okay.
Good. Anybody else? No? Before I let you go, maybe, is there an update on our finance director position you're able to share? I know we did some interviews.
Yep. So John Steinberg, our chief assessor, is going to move into the finance director role probably next month. So he's been serving as our interim finance director, which would require us to move forward with hiring a chief assessor and actually also an assistant assessor, because the person in that position is actually retiring in the fall. But really excited to work with John. I think he's really served really well and very strong in that role as the finance director, and also very excited that we've fully staffed both our accounting office and our treasurer collector office. So really different spot than where we were about a year ago.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I participated in the interview process along with the two members of the select board, and there were actually like 3 different groups interviewing 3 candidates, and very happy with the selection of John from that candidate pool, and just his enthusiasm to take on the new challenges, and he certainly put in his effort for us, as we well know. And one of the roles of having a separate finance director is to work closely with the AFC, and so hopefully once he's not as split, we'll get him, we'll have him more available to answer our questions in real time, which would be great, or at least go research them. And then on that subject, he told me that they are going to be finishing up the fiscal 20, let me get this one right, fiscal 24 close, kind of, at least from the appropriation kind of numbers, the goal I think was end of next week and completely done the week after. So I expect sometime in the next week, well, no, probably 2 weeks or so, we'll get that final report in and in both formats that you guys wanted, Excel and as well as PDF, for the enterprise funds, the main fund, and all the warrant articles, that big report, and then hopefully we'll be able to get that more I don't know if we need it monthly, quarterly anyway. If we want it monthly, we can get it monthly, or every 2 months or something. But get it on a more regular basis now that we're back to staffing. Very good. Anything else on the budget summit? It is the school board, our board, and the select board all together, so.
Did you say, is that 6 o'clock?
No, I didn't say what time it was, because I'm not sure what time it is.
Do you know, Christy?
I think it's usually 6 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah. And we usually meet in the Great Hall because we have all the boards. So I'll send out an agenda to the chairs, and then once that's finalized, we'll get that out. But the select board typically meets at 6 o'clock. So unless the other chairs don't want to do that, I would anticipate around 6.
Sounds like a thing to get an early start on, because there's a lot of information there.
Yeah, definitely.
We're not very good late. Speaking for our board. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the update and participating. You're welcome to hang on or disappear, I guess. We're going to talk next about the special town meeting, and then our plan for getting there, and et cetera.
Great. I'm probably going to drop off because I'm away, but I will look forward to catching up. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Okay. This microphone. Okay. All right, so special town meeting planning. I'm not listening to my own advice. The warrant, version 1 came out. It's 14 articles. Last year for fall town meeting, we had 15, so it's kind of on par, but generally speaking, so far, a lot of these are somewhat, should be a little easier to digest in many cases. I'd like to go through it. And we can pick certainly the things that we want people to come in or present. One of the things is that, well, I'll just go. I'd like so that we could start inviting the people now, which would be good. Okay, let me share if I can find the right one. So I think this is, I'll just share the summary of the names. So I can just go through them in order, right? Prior bills, right now there are none, so there's nobody to invite in, but that's left as a placeholder if that exists. So we won't invite anybody in for that one yet. Fiscal year adjustments, I think we'd like to hear, or I'd like to hear on these. They're somewhat explained. So I think that means Finance Department, Police Department, and I'm gonna guess, I know Christy was talking about this, but I don't know whether this is Board of Health or her, so I'll have to ask her. The fundamental thing of the landfill is we've cut down enormously on the amount of trash being dumped off, and people coming from other towns to our transfer station to dump stuff off. But basically it takes enforcement to do that, and we believe that the savings on the tonnage side will more than make up for probably try to keep somebody in that position longer than the little grant that we had to do it. Anecdotally, there's this, people from Upton, Hopkinton, and other towns have just show up, many even without stickers, in the past, apparently because they were showing up now. So the amount of those dumpsters that they're emptying is just drastically down. So there should be more data on that, but anyway, the fear is if you just stop enforcing it, you just go back where you were. Anyway, that's the part I know about that.
So do you have dates in mind for the police chief? Do you want me to reach out to him? I'm presuming that's what we're doing here, right?
Yeah, when we get to the calendar, I think we could offer almost any of the dates that are there on our calendar, but yes.
Okay.
Yes, so if you would reach out to police, I will try and find out who will speak to landfill, and I can reach out to finance, because I think I'm the liaison to them. Okay, water department budget, I think we need the DPW here because they got enough articles. So Prashant, I'll give you some dates to offer to Chris.
Sure.
Prashant has since, anyway, recently took over from Rod on DPW. So you don't have to do that now, Rod.
That's right.
Isn't it nice? The fire department, I'm not sure we need somebody to come in. It's a negotiated contract. We could hear what the amount is, but you'll know the amount because that's what will be in the thing, so.
I mean, I don't think it's a fire department.
Right.
Anyway, it would be
Yeah.
Christie,
Yeah.
right? So we'll hear from her.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, so let's just, that will just get added in. That's not a special thing. Okay, and the next one up is the golf course thing. Are we interested in learning more about this golf course thing from the enterprise fund?
So there wasn't a dollar amount in there, correct?
25,000.
Oh, it was
25,000.
in there?
This is one of the few with
And
dollar
from
amounts.
country club retained earnings, so it's,
It was just a question of like what sort of
Yeah.
scale are we talking, right? Was it a huge miss in our planning? And that was my context. But I mean, I don't think it's a big
They're just doing it a year early,
Right.
Or maybe 6 months early.
or 6 months,
Right.
yeah.
Right, it could be
Yeah.
six.
And 25,000 doesn't go very far with,
Right. Well, and that was my, I didn't.
with cart pass,
I didn't catch
unfortunately.
the dollar amount,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I was
yeah.
curious about the
yeah,
scale.
it's crazy how much that costs.
Okay, I don't think there's anything else for rec, but if there is, maybe we'll touch back. Or if we change our mind and end up wanting them, we don't have to schedule them yet.
Yep.
All right, so we'll hold off on that. The stormwater improvements is part of the DPW. We'd like to hear about that. I think this is the one where the amount didn't come in, or, oh, this is stormwater. Yeah, anyway, we'll want to hear about that. The community center project, it's too early to schedule that because they don't have the plan yet, but at some point, we'll definitely want to get a presentation. I will tell you that next 2 weeks from tonight, at, I think it's across the hall, across the street, there will be one of the next set of presentations on the community center, which is, they've had ones of getting just general public input, and now they're gonna come back with the architects offering some scenarios,
Yeah, I think they have 3 options or something they're presenting, is that
something like that.
correct?
They're gonna try and do that.
Yeah.
So our assignment for that night, we're not gonna have our meeting, because we would have had been in the same room or do it remote, so I'm partial to just waiting a week and having a meeting a week later. And you can watch that on Westborough TV or in person.
That's 2 weeks from,
It's on the 29th, Thursday night. Now, I don't know, remember if it was 6 or 6:30 or what, but then it'll be publicized. And they're doing 3 of those as well, one at the senior center and one another night. I just happen to know that because we were originally booked in that room, so, yeah. Anyway. So that would be a good background for us anyway, I think. Article 8, well, we've started collecting community preservation money, and so the committee has to, it wants to present whatever they want to appropriate or not, give an update report. So do we have should have our liaison? I don't know if we have one other than me. I don't know if we even put them on. They're new, right? All right. Well, I will reach out to them, and I think they should give us a presentation at some point. And then, okay, Affordable Housing Trust. This is from the Pulte Stabilization Fund. Are you interested in presentation? Yes? No?
This is just gonna be transferring the money we've got, right? Same thing we did last year.
Yeah, it may have been 2 years. I don't remember when it was, but yeah, it's the money from Pulte because they didn't do the affordable.
And they
And
pay it, and then we have to
move it.
transfer it.
I mean, I think it's reasonably
It's pretty
straightforward. No interest? Okay, so we'll skip that for now. Okay, Article 10. Apparently, the state has now allowed us to invest some of our funds differently. Notably, where this could be helpful, I believe, is for the OPEB fund that we've been saving. It allows a difference, I think, more investments than it was allowed before. So we certainly would like to hear about this,
Yeah.
and that's from the finance department, I think. Okay, so definitely want to hear that, and I'll arrange that. Planning. We don't have a planning liaison at the moment. But this one's pretty easy, because I think it's just accepting easements.
I couldn't tell if it was just accepting or acquiring. That would be my only question.
Well, they acquire, but they accept them. The language always has the thing
Okay.
about eminent domain, but all these are ones that are being given, but we can verify that, yeah.
That was my question, the eminent domain.
I think
Yeah.
we talked about it before.
Yeah.
Or purchase is also in there.
Right.
Right.
I feel like I don't want to just say, yeah, sure, I'm fine with eminent
Right.
domain or purchase, so clarifying that they are
Right.
given, then I think we're fine.
I will check with
Just change the language.
Is that Mark?
I will check with the planning department to verify that these are all gifts, none are being acquired for money or by other methods, and if not, then we maybe not have to hear it, and if they are, then we certainly would want to hear it, so.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds fair. Okay, the general bylaws, we certainly would like to hear, and that is also DPW. So I think we're gonna dedicate an evening to DPW. This is a lot of pages, so I'm not gonna go through it right now. I got the impression some of this was state requirement, but still be educational. Next one, next to our zoning bylaws. And I did want to tell you that at the I'll find out the date and set. It's at I think it's potentially September 3rd. There's going to be a joint meeting with the select board and the planning board because they have to appoint a new planning board member because one of the members resigned. And so they appointed an interim one, but at the same time, I heard they're gonna go through the zoning bylaw, so at least be an introduction for us. We don't get to ask questions that way, but they would have a public hearing, and we can also invite them back, but it is a place to at least get educated on Articles 13 and 14. So I won't immediately ask for that, but I will try and we can set up some date. I'd like to sort of look at the calendar now, if I can actually have that technology. Calendar, okay. Share. Okay, so to give you a number of last year, we only had about 10 meetings before special town meeting. So my expectation is we don't need every single one of these 2-a-week meetings that are outlined here right now. I've left them there because as we try to schedule guests, it gives us more flexibility. So if we don't have a guest or we don't need it. The one thing I will point out, though, is we kind of have to have our act together because you can see at the end, we end up with very few meetings. We have the tri-board meeting on the 26th. We do have a meeting on the 30th. The following Thursday is a holiday. We have an option for a meeting the next Monday and the next Thursday. By then, we have to approve the R&R because there's a holiday and it also has to get printed. So at the end, we get a little more squeeze. So my intent is to try and get in our guests in the front half, and then we can spend more time discussing and also, or just not having meetings if we don't need them, once we have it. Also, I don't want to bring up the citizen petition thing, but there might be other articles added. We're past the deadline where the town is supposed to create articles, in essence, other than these placeholders. So there shouldn't be much more from the town if needed, but those usually don't have to happen until the warrant's closed at the September 24th Select Board meeting. The good news is you need more signatures because this is a special town meeting, so it's not 10, it's 100 something. I don't know. It's a bigger number.
Yeah.
It's not just 10, yeah.
Can we make them all special town meetings?
I know, right?
They're all special to
All
me.
town meetings are special.
All special.
Okay. So we'll see. So does that plan work for everybody? And my plan is to not have our meeting in 2 weeks, wait till the following Thursday, try to get guests in, and then on that Thursday we can learn more about the community center plans. Everybody good with that?
I know I'm going to live to regret this, but
Good.
I generally like Mondays better than Thursdays. And I'm sure as soon as I say that, my Mondays will fill up with things, but if there's a choice.
Okay, I generally like Thursdays more than Mondays, just because I'm more tired on Monday, and
Weekend, yep.
being prepped for Monday is usually harder, but
I'm with Rod.
you like Monday? You don't?
I got some Thursdays that are.
Okay. All right, well, I'll keep it in mind. I know before we had somebody that couldn't even make Thursdays at one point when I first joined, so.
Football conflicts on Thursdays than
Okay.
Mondays.
See?
All
There
right.
you go. Thursday night
So
lights.
we'll try and offer Monday nights, and we have a lot more Mondays than Thursdays. So I'll just adapt.
We're going to wind up using both.
Well, I can't.
Definitely jinxed
I
it by
can't,
this
I can't
conversation.
That's why I
guarantee
hate to
that
say
we
it.
would have no Monday,
Yeah, I
no
know.
Thursdays, but often you have a choice. And so I could offer, like, you can
No, I
offer the
get-
police several Mondays.
Yeah, hey,
control of that one,
that one I can.
And if he can't
That one I can
come,
work,
then,
yeah.
you know, I can do the same thing. And there aren't that many in this
Yeah.
warrant. This is so much
Yeah.
smaller than the
And that one, I would imagine-
just think of the budget and the capital lines alone are bigger than this,
Yeah.
so.
And I mean, the police doesn't have to be exclusive to the meeting.
No, it could be shared with another, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
'cause
think the
it's not gonna be a
DPW
huge
had enough
conversation.
in here, maybe
Yeah,
that's.
DPW might get their own meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe a Thursday too.
Well,
That could be
and
a
maybe
Monday.
planning, right? So DPW and planning. just
Depends-
because
depends how
planning
the
has a
public meeting
handful of
goes.
things. True.
yeah, but we didn't end up with that many. If I go back to
There's really only
the
4.
other list of the top share articles, meetings, article. Okay, prior bills is no. We wanted these 3. I'll just highlight them if I can. I don't have the drawing up, okay. DPW, community center, this, that we want to hear, and planning and DPW. Okay, so there's probably about 5 groups, but some of those are smaller. Okay, we definitely don't need all those meetings. Good. Okay.
So if I may,
Yeah.
just looking at the schedule, I have this sort of untethered sense of unease that we've already put out there, that we have a concern about the budget and the possibility of, like, how can we keep it really reined in, and we've talked about it, that's good. But it seems that what's happening for our meeting that we're talking about, the schedule's gonna be packed, so I don't know how much we can really get into it. I think the concern I have is that there still seems like there's a lot that we would need to talk about, some very hard, very detailed conversations to talk about, that I don't know that waiting till, like, the September meeting is the right time to kick this off. But that's not based in anything I'm like fear-mongering for, only that I feel like this feels like we're about to slip into what we've done in the past, and we might not be able to be carving out the right sort of times to have those tough conversations, or the tough research, or the tough, the pieces that need to happen. I stand to be corrected if somebody thinks, looking at that schedule, that, yeah, you know what, we're probably positioning ourselves well enough, and we don't really need to use any of the time between now and then to dig into things. Then I'm on an island, and I'm certainly not going to drive everybody's concerns here. But I want to put it out there that it feels like time is passing where we could be addressing it somehow, and I don't know what that looks like, but
I don't know what we would do. The groups, this is really a kickoff meeting for the budget, is September 21, so there's no data really to look at other than last year, which we will have shortly, so data mining what you want from fiscal '24 is certainly a valuable thing to do between now and then,
Yeah.
because I think there are valuable questions to ask about what we spent or didn't spend in those
Yep.
budgets versus what, it's obviously, it's the only example we have of actual numbers, right, versus, because this year's too early.
Yep.
I think we could use meetings, let's say, after the budget summit to have further conversations in areas based on what we learn or have heard from that, follow-ups.
So, I think in support
But I
of what you're
don't see
saying.
doing that in,
Yep.
like, next week or something.
So, in support of what you're saying, though, maybe there's an opportunity to have John in before we even have the meetings to understand what kind of data can we get, what kind of options can we like try and pull. I just to start thinking of this and getting ourselves prepared. If there's anything, and I say that not being an expert in these things, but only wanting to make sure we don't look back in October and say, geez, we lost 2 months that we could have done more prepping for. And I'm just keeping the conversation out there. So,
You had a comment, I just had to cut you off.
I was just looking to get clarification from you
yeah.
as to who you wanted to have the tough conversations with. Did you mean for us to have tough conversations, or are you looking to have tough conversations with somebody else besides Christie? But it seems like, I think you kind of answered it.
Yeah. Well, I
Anyway,
think-
you're looking for earlier information from John
right.
about running different scenarios against the budget.
And anything we can do, like, to prepare
Not
for
against
it
the
in
tax
advance.
levy, but
Like,
against
'cause
the budget.
It's why I asked the question I did of Christie about, like, scenario planning and if we could do some of that thinking in advance, what does that look like? And for that matter, what can John, or what kind of information can we have that we can do, like, valuable research on? Those are questions we can ask before the rubber hits the road, and before numbers are fully baked, just so we can be prepared for it. I think preparation is going to be essential for us making the most of this. Otherwise, we find ourselves 2-3 months in, and it'll be too late because people have already started their planning. But your point is well made that there'll be more after. But I think maybe
It's not too late. And one of the interesting things is the school department has no articles at the fall town meeting. So we could have a meeting where we have the school superintendent come in and we get to know, and you get to ask some questions, because clearly that's it's a majority of the budget
Yeah.
anyway. But it's a new superintendent, and so that may be a possibility, and all these meeting dates we have is something that is sort of moving things forward, and she gets to meet finance committee before next spring when it's
Yeah.
the big thing.
And meeting her is important, to be clear, but we also have almost no say on the school budget. I think there's value in seeing more numbers, but like,
But, I just object to the whole idea that we're gonna go down every little, like,
yeah,
rabbit hole on the 40% of the budget, but do nothing on the 60?
no, I don't think I'm trying to put it that way, and this is maybe where cooperating with the school, the school budget committee will to understand how we can connect with them and whether or not they would share what we're trying to do, because we just vote up and down on the total. They do all of
I
that
understand.
work. So I guess while I definitely want to get to know the superintendent, the budget doesn't seem like a place where we would have a lot of influence, because it really leaves us and then goes to other people.
Well, we have the same influence we have with all of them. All we do is make a recommendation to town meeting. We think you should spend this
Mhm.
much on this. You could make a recommendation for the schools. You can't specifically tell them what to do with it.
No, understood.
But,
Understood.
the town is more, even crazily, almost over-divided up into, some budgets that are $3,000 worth of supplies or something, So, anyway, I think because we have a new sheriff in town, so to
Yep.
speak, that it would be important. And important for her to understand some of your feelings. I mean, I talked a little bit about
Yep.
at our last finance team meeting where we talk about stuff and people's interests.
Oh, and I'm grateful, thank you. I do appreciate the opportunity to talk, I really do, and I don't mean to scale back on that, only to say I realize that our purview of the influence is different for the school than it is for all the other towns, even though, yes, we vote up and down on those. But literally, the level of detail, I mean, the reason we have such a narrative view of it is because that's all they have to show us. You know, there hasn't been that compelling need to go, whereas we have more detail on others. And again, I take nothing away from your suggestion, we can talk to her, I think that's a great idea. I
To Walter's point, though, I mean, I sort of think we do vote the same way on both of them, and they present it the way they present it, and to some extent, by voting in favor of it, we're accepting the information they've given us. So, if that's not what we want, we don't have a lot of levers, there's not a lot of things we
Yep.
can do to force change, other than to not vote in support of something because we don't feel comfortable with the data.
So
So we could make it very clear that our expectation, if you want our vote in support, is a presentation of data in a way that's acceptable to us. I'm not saying that that's what we should or shouldn't do. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that is an option, right? That
But
is sort of
that's
an
a-
aggressive approach to it also. And so I'm not
And an
necessarily
important thing to say, to your point, early,
up.
you can't say
absolutely.
that in March.
So to
mean, you
sort of
can.
Well,
Andrew's
you
point,
can, but
right,
it's
I
not
get the
fair,
idea
right.
that if we want to push for change, if we want to push for a different presentation or change
Yep.
in how budgets are approached or what that increase looks like, absolutely that conversation has to happen early in the process, right? We can't have this conversation with people in February when we're reviewing all the work that's already done, right?
Yep.
And so I agree to that, and so I don't disagree with the idea, right? Maybe there should be more meetings happening now, maybe there is some necessity to sort of look at the fall town meeting and the budget process simultaneously just because of timing. But if we're going to do that, right, so I agree, and that makes sense, and so then I'm trying to picture, what are we asking John for? So I don't disagree, but I think we want to be very clear on what is, because I do think having a conversation with John is a great starting point. But if we're going to do that and we want that to be productive, what are we going to ask John for? Are we going to ask him to walk us through last year's financials because that gives us a better understanding of the basis? Are we going to ask him to walk us through, right, any of those things are reasonable, and I think it makes sense, and I think that that is a great starting point. And it is probably a good idea to do before that budget summit, because if we say, oh, well, that's a thing I didn't understand, tell us more, and tell all of us that at this budget summit might make sense, and it might inform that conversation, which I think is where you're trying to go.
Yeah, and I'll say it, I've been talked into the wisdom of trying to change the stripes of the horse that is the school department, which has had a history and a comfort of providing a very narrative view because they haven't had that pushback. We have a chance to reset. I was underselling that as an opportunity here, and I shouldn't have. So props to you guys, like for making that case. I'm behind it.
Okay. The other thing is the school department does not have to prepare anything for town meeting. So in theory, there's some, I appreciate how busy their bandwidth is, especially in the fall. At some point, a little bit of bandwidth there that they're not preparing on 4 roof articles and
Right.
3
I mean,
other
that's true,
things
right?
there.
If we ask them to focus when they're not also preparing for town meeting, and then we move on to working with Chris, who was, or whatever the case, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just would see value in having a conversation. They have a finance director too,
Mhm.
Anita Patel, and so I think that would be a good meeting to,
So
I'll see if
maybe
I can
it's-
get something with that, or maybe you want to as liaison,
I mean,
because you
maybe
haven't
there's
had
a,
a chance to.
and I'm
you know.
happy to do that, and
Yeah.
right, so I asked a lot of questions in terms of their process and the details last year. Obviously, I'll continue to, because the nerdy accountant in me also really needs data, not narrative. But maybe, to Andrew's point, it's worth looking at. So I see the value in meeting with them, and maybe it's meeting with Anita and John and asking similar questions, because there's certain fundamental information we want to have prior to that meeting. I just think we need to define what that information, that conversation is, so we can provide them those questions up front. And then I don't see any reason not to. And I would think, to your point, yes, we'd want to meet with Anita, not just John. I think it's probably both, right? If prior to that tri-board meeting, we can meet with both, we can understand what we know or don't know, and then decide from there, do we think there's value in focusing on schools where there really is this opportunity for doing it differently? Or do we think there's enough complexity in the overall town that we want to focus it? But I think that maybe a meeting with the two of them, to Andrew's point, is a good starting point. And I think we just need to define what is the information that we're asking them
Yep.
to provide.
Okay, and I'm just thinking that they're in different situations for fiscal '26. The school contracts are all determined, you know, you can eliminate employees, but the rate of increase
Right.
is already determined for the school department for next year, whereas the town employees will be entering into contract negotiations this year.
Two of the unions this year, right?
I think it was a
believe it's-
pile of them.
I think it's police and DPW and clerical and fire.
Well, the fire,
are next.
at least part of the fire is done.
Fire's
Yeah.
done.
Or almost done.
The police are two different unions. I think it's one of the two. And DPW this year.
I don't know all of them. But I think I got the impression that most of them were up.
Right.
And so, yeah, the school increase is already higher than the numbers you guys have tossed out just on those
Right.
increases because of between step and
COLA.
COLA, they'll be
Yeah.
higher. Okay. So
Could-
that's,
could-
yeah.
Is anybody else concerned that there's no article from the school and special town meeting?
For what?
Can we, I don't know, but can you remember the last time there wasn't?
I think last
There was
fall,
one
they may not have
last
had, they may have
fall.
one, I don't know.
Yeah, so in the time
It's
I've been
happened
here, we've
before.
always had a school
Okay.
one.
Gift horse, mouth, give it to
Yeah,
me.
no, it's happened before.
Or are we missing?
Or are we missing something? We have a brand new
No.
superintendent and we're missing something. I mean,
And you're
it's
forgetting how
Okay.
many projects we
No,
went
no, I know,
through
we,
with them
yeah,
last
yeah,
time,
yeah.
and,
Yeah, no, you're right.
Let's just hope
I
we've
think they
already
were,
done.
they were also talking about pushing one of the roofs to special, and if they choose that, say
Yeah.
that's not the right time, I think.
Well,
that's
they
fine.
thought about that too, and I did
Yeah.
talk to Steve about it, and I told him my general sense of this committee was, it wasn't just kicking the can down 6 months, it was some of you had general concerns about whether it made sense to do that.
Mhm.
It's up to the school board to decide whether they want to bring it back, whether it's this fall or next year or
Yep.
whenever. But that, so far, that hasn't happened.
Yeah, no, yeah,
You're talking about specifically Mill Pond.
Yeah.
yeah. I wasn't disappointed not to see that. I'm just, I'm
Let the
glad
ci-
you can remember a special fall town meeting without a article from the school, but I'm not sure I can, so.
I just remember having a conversation with Amber because she didn't have to,
Yep,
I don't remember what year, but I think
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
true.
All right.
Or I'm just crazy.
that's
Or-
possible too.
That, yeah, it's not exclusive. Okay.
Both things can be true.
So, should we leave that, Jane, where you want to talk to them, or you want me to, or what do you want to do?
So I think we need to make a decision. Do we want to ask Anita to come in? And I mean, I think it would be Anita and Allison, but I think in particular talking to our finance person who's been here for more than a week would make sense. So I'm happy to coordinate.
Okay.
Do we also want to ask John to come in? And then do we want to figure out sort of what our questions are in advance? And if we're going to do that, we have to consider open meeting laws and how we are going to consolidate questions to pass along to them.
I don't think they need to be here together. I think they're
Yeah.
two separate discussions, just because of the way the town works.
Yeah.
I was really just thinking in the essence of like the number of meetings, does it make sense to do both in one night, less than
But you could
both
do,
at the same
you
time?
could do one plus some other article on
Okay.
the same night.
Yeah,
I mean, if they
True,
happen to be on
true.
the same night, but I don't think they need to be on the same night, would be
I-
my sense. I mean, for John, I think, maybe walking through appropriation
Would be a
report,
good thing to do.
and then talking about, basically giving us a preview of the budget preview. Like, what do you see as the pressure points coming up? I mean, those are the things I would want to
So with John,
talk to him about ahead
I
of
would
time.
almost want to see fiscal '24 financials.
Yeah, which is the
And
appropriation.
roll that forward.
Yeah.
What do you expect to see?
Well, that's what
But
I asked
wanted
for.
I want to take
And
it
it
that.
was almost a bullet point, you notice that, because that's what I had asked for at the last meeting from John and Christie. Like, roll forward 24, and what does it look
Right.
like?
And I wonder, I
And it
mean, at
was
this point, we
kind of their
might not
first
get a
bullet.
roll forward, but can I
Right.
at least get from John, walk us through the financials, and then tell me, even if it's a narrative form, we expect this to increase because we expect
Right.
this to change. OPEB might change because of new rules on investing, and salaries
Oh.
always increase,
Yeah,
or,
yeah,
Say OPED might increase because the state is
Might.
requiring more money to
Right.
be, and the retirement might change too, because there's been noise about that too.
yeah, I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if we aren't expected to
Those are
contribute more to
rules-
OPEB
rule
in the near
changes.
future.
pretty underfunded.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, I think for John, I think that's the approach I think would make sense, and I think, Walter, that's probably you scheduling. I don't know if anyone has any different requests or different information or presentation.
May I send you some thoughts, like, not a discussion, just sort of hear the types of questions, and you can put them through your, like,
Accountant
finance filter, yeah, and see if they make sense. I mean, I have thoughts, I just don't want to be
Yeah.
blurting things out, I've already blurted my
Yeah,
share.
so, yeah, as long as you don't deliberate
Right.
as a group, but you can come up with ideas for meetings and suggestions, so I think that's all very appropriate.
So
mean,
why don't,
sorry.
I guess, to that end, if anyone
I mean-
has particular questions that they would like, if people want to send them to me, then I can consolidate them into a reasonable set of questions or conversation points to forward on
Yeah.
to Anita and John, and then if you want to try and schedule an evening that John's available, and I can work with Anita to find an evening she's available. I don't know
So-
that they'll necessarily be the same questions, but I'm
So-
happy to consolidate sort of both sets.
I feel like for the school, we're 6 months behind where we are for the town side. I feel like 6 months ago, we started having the discussion with Christie and John and others about, how do we impact this? How do we reduce the rate of increase? How do we, and we all know the answer, but how do we as a committee impact that? I don't think the school has necessarily heard that side yet. I mean, maybe Amber has a little bit. But
Well, both the chair and the superintendent were at our finance team meeting where we
Yep.
talked about this subject, so they have heard at least our concerns,
we haven't heard from this board, right?
indirectly through me.
Okay,
Right.
all right. Well, what I was going to
But I do
suggest
think
is,
you're right, it's a very.
That's
What I was
why
leading to-
suggesting, that's why I was thinking
thought
that
maybe
it's
maybe-
good to have her here, because you
Yep.
guys have your own.
right, so that's what I was
Slant on
leading to,
things
rather
and your
than
own
ask them
dinner.
for, X, Y, and Z things. I think it's more an opportunity for us to talk to them about
Okay.
what the concerns, and this is just
Yeah.
one person, what the concerns are of the committee, what we're looking for, and then especially in their budget presentation, some of the things we'd like to see.
Yeah,
I mean, because I
think-
feel like we're not at the point yet with them where we can go and say, okay, we've been having this discussion, so show us the report today.
Right.
Whereas with John, I feel like
Yeah,
we
We
are.
very
expecting her to
candidly
come and
said-
show us the
Right.
report.
Right.
I think you gotta
Right.
expect to come and have it just a discussion.
Yeah,
So with schools, I do think my thought along those lines then, and again, I love people to share if they have different feedback, but I think I would love to talk through, especially where Allison is new. So what is her expectation in approaching their budget process? Not numbers, right? But with the schools then, John, maybe I want more numbers. With the schools, maybe then it's more process. How do you anticipate approaching it? We know that you've been here for 2 weeks now, so don't expect too much, and how do you expect to present data? And let us tell you what we would like to see in terms of data and explanation, right? And see if it's an opportunity to capitalize on this transition, to shift expectations in terms of how we would like to see data, but also starting with a conversation about, do they already have some expectations in place, and how does that align with what we're hoping to do less data focused than John, but more process focused.
Mhm.
And does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense to me to establish a connection and rapport that we don't have with, because it's a new person.
And you're right. Like, we are 6 months behind that conversation that we've started with.
But we
John and
didn't have,
Christie.
yeah, when the
Right.
person started July 1st, so.
Right. No,
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
complaining about
It's
being
not a-
behind. I'm just
Yeah.
saying that's where we are.
Right, and
It's a
I
statement
also
of
look
fact.
at,
It's
like,
not an
all this
assignment of
stuff
blame.
we're talking about, to me, is much more of a longer-term evolution plan than it is necessary that it's actually gonna, kersplash on March of 2025. But, what effect does it have there, and what effect does it have in 26 and
Right.
27?
Oh, I disagree. I think these conversations we've been having have already had an effect.
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
What
I
I'm
mean,
saying is,
look at this warrant. I
But
mean,
over time, it's cumulative effect,
Yeah,
I think, is
no,
Walter's
absolutely.
point. We're
Yeah.
going to see, hopefully, we see more data in 25, and we
Right.
see a little bit different data in 26.
Right.
And over time, we can work with them to adapt
It's a
both
proc-
process and data.
it's process improvement, it's
Right.
not an absolute. Very good. Okay, so I would like to update on the positions for liaison first, and then we'll get any liaison reports that sort of exist. Prashant has volunteered, so the question is, well, two people volunteered. Adam volunteered that if we needed anybody for any of these or all of them, he would be willing to jump in. He's really new. It's too much, I think, to put on a new person. Prashant has expressed interest in insurance, right? And I don't want to get him wrong, but planning?
Planning.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just gonna, can I do this here? What? I don't know, it's not cooperating. All right, anyway, so planning, ZBA too?
Sorry?
Do you want to do the ZBA, zoning board?
Same people.
No, it isn't.
It's,
I heard
there's
Actually,
overlap.
It's no, it's just the director of planning, it's the same. I don't think they have any members. Or maybe they have one member from the planning board. Okay, insurance planning board, it can be different. And there's this insurance advisory committee, which I'm not even sure exists. So I'll ask Christie about it,
Yeah,
but it's the same
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
insurance.
Yep.
So I'm gonna put you down for insurance and planning. And, okay, and then does, assuming that no one else objects to the, I wanted desperately to do those, and hearing no objections, I can certainly, conservation's a really interesting one. Does anybody want that? If not, I will ask Adam to do it, because he is willing to do it. Okay. So that's Samala?
Oh, you're changing the wrong one. You're changing police.
Oh, well, that's because we're always, on the wrong line. Okay. And I will ask him about the ZBA. I don't know how often they meet, or they generally don't have,
I think
Anything-
it's an as-needed thing.
it's
Yeah.
neat, and they generally don't have anything to do with warrant articles. I don't think they have a budget. I'm not sure. Maybe they have a secretary.
I think you're right.
Okay. All right, so in that case, we've solved this. For now, unless anybody else wanted to shift around what they were doing.
The only, and I'm glad to stay, but the sewer and water enterprise are really kind of DPW,
But he's just taking on other stuff.
Not just kind of.
kind of. I'll stay as your backup.
I mean,
How's that?
yeah,
Well, you like sewer.
Absolutely.
You
I
like
do,
the sewer
I do.
plant.
It's just, that's, water and sewer are
that's good to
half
have.
of the DPW.
Yeah,
Yes, well, what, you want to start there and
No.
we'll figure it out as we need it.
Yeah.
Generally, Chris comes anyway,
Yeah,
so there
that's-
isn't,
that-
there's some questions to be asked, and you're pretty good at asking sewer
Yeah.
questions for some reason. I
Well,
don't know
You're
why.
gonna ask the question.
All right, all
All
right.
right.
You're
well,
gonna give him a hard time regardless.
You've been
Hey,
typecast.
Chris and I were on the same page the other day. I was very excited.
Okay.
We were beating up on the golf club.
There is an
wastewater
opening.
treatment plant committee.
Opening still on the active transportation, if anybody's interested in that. And I think that's about it. Well, we'll see if it's needed. Oh, and then now this new, the new one, the,
Stormwater?
no, stormwater's, well, yeah, I guess that's part of DPW, isn't it, Rob? Nope. No, the Community Preservation Act Committee
Oh,
might,
yeah.
because they will have, actual articles. But again, they'll probably always be coming. So we'll leave that at the moment. Okay, are there any liaison reports?
So just quickly on the golf club municipal building committee, had some very productive sessions with the architect, and we've narrowed down several options to select a keep as new, which is actually a hybrid solution to keep the part of the building up front that's more historic and then rebuild the back. And then an all-new option. Both have interesting advantages. The all-new one is actually a two-story building, which has some opportunities to build a separate function space and restaurant that would be on the second floor above the golf course and leaving the bottom floor for the golfers and bar and pub. So interesting ideas. Next step is for them to develop some elevations and start to develop the budgets for each option. I was a little surprised there's nothing on the warrant yet. I just emailed Al Gordon to see if we should have a placeholder or whether it's too late to have a placeholder, because I'm sure we're going to want to suggest we move forward with something. So I'm not sure what the regulations are in terms of when the town can and can't, but I'll find out.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, it can be added to warrant up until when the select board closes it,
Okay.
if they choose to do it, so it could be added still till September 20-something. There also is options for having special town meetings, which we've done in the past when there's something like that, which is just out of sync, but you don't really want to wait till
No,
March
the whole-
20th or something.
Yeah, the whole idea was to get the information with the estimates prior to the October town meeting, so I think that's the goal.
Okay.
And then I went to the wastewater treatment plant meeting on Wednesday. A lot of discussion about flows and how they get calculated and what they mean. All very interesting stuff. And
They're still working
See,
on
you're
that?
the perfect guy.
Wait, don't they have that figured out yet?
so they Chris has published, and it is on the DPW site in terms of their calculations for what they've allocated and what we're actually using, and now they're trying to make sense of what they've got and what to do with it. So
Yeah, I mean, overall, it
More to come
sounds
on
like we promised people more than they really need because of certain things like Title V, which has very high expectations. I mean, toilets are all much lower flow than they were 10 years ago and things like that too, but I mean, it sounds like they should be able to figure out a way to still have growth.
Have they figured out where all the water is leaking yet?
That's different, that's not sewage.
But,
Well,
yeah,
it's-
no, it
it's
is.
water
It
in
is the
general.
same. That ties into your flow calculations, which is
Ah.
interesting because, you plot the graphs, and when you have higher rainfall and higher
Oh, right,
water
right, right.
table, they have higher flows to the
I
plant.
see,
So
because
there's calculations on that, but clearly, years like this year, they are definitely influencing the amount of flow that goes into the plant, so.
But aren't we like prototyping new meters so we can track water better? Because we had this understanding that 10%, 15% of our water is leaking and people aren't paying for it.
I think
I could try some of the old
Yeah, no,
water
this,
articles, but-
that's the
kind
water
of a separate
enterprise
issue.
thing. Yeah,
okay. Sorry.
we can get an update on that, but yeah, those are ongoing things. Anybody else? Okay, Library Building Committee continues to meet. We're gotten the first swath of some cost estimates for the repair, and going through those and sort of deciding certain things, like, a gray or green slate is much less expensive than a red slate. You can save a couple $100,000 if you are able to switch the color and things like that. Just because of the rarity of the red slate and its availability. And then looking at a whole lot of little options to do different stuff with different bricks and this and that and the other thing. Anyway, that's moving forward, so I expect at the spring town meeting we will have good bids and be able to make a proposal on that. And it's all kind of close to what they thought before. It came in a little bit higher, but we're cutting out some stuff, so I think we'll probably end up about where we thought we'd be. And the other thing we did was I participated in a meeting with the architects of the library project, with the architects of the town, the community center, because there was concern that they kind of weren't designing the same stuff and doing the same stuff. So the library architects presented, and we had a good discussion with the people that are making the proposals for the community center. So it was a little clearer to them what was going into the library. That's something Christie organized, which I thought was a good idea. And I think that's about it for library. And I don't think I have any other basic stuff, so how about approval of minutes of July 8th? Motion?
McMahon, I move we approve the minutes of July 8th.
Bradley, second?
Is that the right date?
Yes.
That's why
It is
my
our
voice
last
went up at
meeting.
the end. Yeah,
It
that
is
was,
our last meeting. 'Cause this, yeah, we only had one meeting in July, one meeting in August. So. Any further? All in favor? We're all here. 6, 7?
you have to
Six.
keep going.
Yeah, I know, that's in favor. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? One abstains. How many are here?
7.
7.
601.
601, okay, good. Oh, that's right. And Adam is somewhere far away, because he said he would have to call in like 12 hours out of time or something.
Oh.
And Beth said she wasn't gonna make it, so,
Madam,
okay.
where is Adam?
There we go. So that makes sense. We have 7. Okay, anybody have anything else? If not, our next meeting will be, in theory, the 5th of September.
Yeah, so just one question, Walter. Do you want me to reach out to Chris after 5th of September about the possible dates? Or should we give, I think you already have some dates for him.
I'll send you an email with dates. I'm gonna suggest you offer to Chris.
Perfect, yeah.
And then you
Sounds
should offer it to him as soon as possible, but he doesn't have to get back to us right away. But, yeah,
Makes sense.
we might as well offer it to him now.
Okay.
And he can figure in his schedule, particularly if it's a Monday, apparently.
Should have a vote on
I'll
that.
offer him lots of Mondays.
Schedule for not.
Okay, anybody else? No? How about a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
And who seconded that?
Clap second.
Bob second. Chafford, motion, okay. All in favor?
Mike is working.
None opposed? Good night, thank you, Westborough TV.
Thank you.
Thank you for keeping us on schedule, Walter.